Hi everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, recently we've been talking to you guys about how we are getting back into raising quail for meat and we're getting back into raising rabbits for meat. And because of that, we have gotten quite a few questions about both raising quail and raising rabbits and kind of the comparison of the two, like which is better. So today we wanted to talk with you about a lot of those questions and hopefully help you guys decide whether or not maybe raising quail for meat or rabbits for meat would be a good idea for you guys too.
So the first question that we get a lot, and really it's a pretty basic question, is which one is easier to raise and which one is easier to process, rabbits or quail? I'll tell you the truth, in my opinion, is there's not a good solid answer to that question. They're both easy to raise and they're both easy to process if you have experience doing it. So you need to just jump in and you need to get some experience. Both the quail and the rabbits have pros and cons, and that's kind of what we want to talk to you about today so that you guys can make your own decision about which one you think is easier. Now on our homestead, typically I'm more of the quail guy and Sarah's more of the rabbit girl, and so we kind of split those responsibilities up. But ultimately, when it comes to processing day, that usually falls more on me than it does to Sarah, at least the part outside, and then Sarah takes care of cleaning up the meat inside of the house. So let's start by talking about the raising portion of them, which is easier to raise, quail or rabbits. Quail, I believe, are easy because you can raise them pretty much anywhere. You can raise them indoors, you can raise them, heck, in an apartment if you want to. You can raise them outside if you have the proper caging to keep them secure from predators or, and from the weather. So they're really a versatile animal in that way that you can really raise them just about anywhere.
And I feel that rabbits are also very easy to raise. They can be raised in a cage type setting. They could be raised in a rabbit tractor on the ground where you can move them from place to place and use the grass and the surroundings as a supplement to their feed. They're very clean animals. They don't flip things all over the place, and when you have them in a cage environment, their urine and their poop just falls down to the ground. It's very easy to sweep up the rabbit manure or scoop it up to use it for fertilizer. They're very clean eating, they're very clean drinking, and they keep themselves clean as well.
Now the one thing that I'll add to that is that as far as rabbits go, I personally would never raise rabbits in stacking type cages with pans underneath. Even though they're fairly clean animals, with a pan, you're collecting the manure and the urine all in one pan. That can get pretty smelly and pretty messy. So personally, we only ever raise rabbits where their urine can soak into the ground, and then we can collect the manure on top of the ground. Quail, on the other hand, as you can see right behind me, we do raise in stacking cages with just a little bit of pine bedding on the tray underneath them. That collects all of the manure, and because they don't really urinate, it's kind of all one thing. They don't really get very stinky, and it's not very messy at all. It takes me about 30 seconds every 2 days to switch each one of these pans for a clean pan. So not much work at all as far as raising the quail in stacking cages.
And we have found that rabbits really don't have an odor either, as long as you have them above dirt.
Right.
If you have them on concrete, they can get really smelly. Gravel would be really hard to harvest the manure.
Right.
As long as you have them on dirt, they shouldn't have a lot of smell. If you have them in a rabbit tractor, there shouldn't be any odor either.
Right. All right, so let's switch gears just a little bit and let's talk about which one gives you the fastest turnaround for meat into your freezer.
Now rabbits have about a 28-day gestation period, and after they are born, they take about 10 to 12 weeks to grow into butcher size. So total time from basically conception to dinner table is about 16 weeks or 4 months.
Right. Now with quail, on the other hand, you are going to get a faster turnaround. So you have your eggs, you put them in your incubator, you're looking at 15 to 18 days for those eggs to incubate and hatch. And then you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks after that before you can actually process those birds. So in total, including the time in the incubator, you're looking at probably 8 to 10 weeks, somewhere in that range. And so that is a very fast turnaround. At that point, you can process those birds and put them in the freezer. Now, the cool thing about quail is during that entire time, during those 8 to 12 or 8 to 10 weeks, you're also collecting more eggs, which you can either incubate or you can eat those eggs. So you're getting a constant flow of food from quail. It's not just the meat, but you're also getting the eggs. So definitely you're getting more bang for your buck that way with the quail.
So I want to just quickly talk about the quantity of meat that you actually get per rabbit in comparison to quail and what you would need in order to make a meal. For our family, we cook 1 rabbit for a meal, but we do need plenty of sides to go along with it. Right. 1 rabbit full size isn't a ton of meat, but it's fine for our family.
Right. Now with quail, we typically plan for 2 quail per person for a meal. Now quail and rabbit are both very lean animals. There's not a lot of fat on them, so they're very filling. They're so high in protein that when you eat them, you feel full pretty fast. So you don't need a ton of the meat in order to fill up. And like Sarah said, we always have plenty of good sides with them whenever we make either of them. So again, 2 quail per person, or for our family of 4, 1 rabbit is what we use. All right, so let's move on to the final part of this, and that is processing of the animals. Which one is easier? You guys, both of them are very easy. And I would recommend, honestly, that if you have the ability to, you raise both of them. I think rabbits are probably the cleanest animals that we process here on the homestead. They're just so fast and clean to process. And we can get, I can get through a litter of 8 to 10 rabbits in less than an hour, because I've been doing it a lot. It may take you longer when you first start, but it's really an easy process. Much easier than like chickens, where you need a plucker or to hand pluck and you need to scald them and all of that. Mm-hmm. Rabbits are way easier. Now quail are also very easy. We actually skin our quail when we butcher them, and that is a very fast process. It takes less than maybe 2 or 3 minutes per quail to do the skinning process. The nice thing about quail is if you live in an apartment or say somewhere where you don't want people to see you processing animals outside, you can actually process quail inside. There's very little blood because you're not plucking them and everything, you're just skinning them. You could really do it in your kitchen sink if you wanted to, and it would make very little mess. So I think from that standpoint, if you're maybe in an apartment or a condo or somewhere, say where you have neighbors who you know are going to throw a fit about seeing you process animals in your backyard, quail are probably the better way to go as far as that standpoint.
And I think actually in general, when you're talking about apartments, we've actually had a subscriber mention to us that they use stacking cages to raise their quail in an apartment. Right. So that is very doable in a city, urban situation. Rabbits probably could as well, although because their urine is so distinctly smelling and you'd have to have them in stacking cages with trays, that might get a little bit smellier. It might be harder to do in that situation. Right. So as far as small locations and apartments, I would say quail would be a lot easier and definitely much more doable than rabbits.
Right. The nice thing about quail and rabbits, though, is that in almost every situation, they're not considered livestock. Homeowners associations, apartment complexes, they don't consider either of them livestock. They actually consider them pets. So there should be no rules against raising them. Raising quail in a cage like behind me is no different than having like a parakeet in a cage. Right. As far as an apartment complex goes. And same with rabbits. They just consider it a pet. So you can get away with a lot with those animals that you can't get away with, with chickens or something like that.
Right.
All right, let's move on to some more specific questions now. We've been getting a lot of questions more about quail lately because I've been doing more quail videos lately, so I want to address some of those. The first question that we've gotten just a ton of times already is, tell us kind of the overall time frame of everything that happens in the quail raising process. So let's start with collecting eggs for hatching. If you're collecting eggs for hatching, you really want them to be 10 days old or less at the time that you put them in your incubator. Personally, I only keep them for a week, so I'll collect eggs for 1 solid week and then I'll put them in the incubator, and I feel like that is a good time frame to get good fertility. So once you put them in the incubator, you're going to put them in for 15 days in their egg turners. There are a variety of different egg turners that you get, but you want them to be in an automatic egg turner for 15 days. If your incubator doesn't have an egg turner, you want to turn them at least 2 or 3 or 4 times a day by hand, every egg that's in there for those 15 days. After 15 days, you're going to take them out of the egg turner and you're going to just lay them flat on the bottom of your incubator and raise your humidity way up. And sometime between day 16 and day 20 is when your eggs are going to hatch. Usually it's day 18 is the magic day when all of the hatching is going to occur if you've done everything right. Might be a little sooner if your temperature was a little on the high side. Might be a little longer if your temperature was a little on the low side. But it's going to be somewhere in that time frame. Once they hatch, you want to leave them in the incubator for 24 to 36 hours. You want to fight the urge to take them out too soon, because every time you open that incubator, the other eggs that haven't hatched yet are going to, there's a chance that the babies inside are almost going to like shrink wrap inside of their eggs. So if there's an egg that's already pipped, and you know there's that membrane that always sticks to like hard-boiled eggs, that's around the chick inside of the egg. If that egg is already pipped and you open the incubator, the cold air rushing in can actually almost shrink wrap the chick inside of the egg.
And the decrease in humidity.
And the decrease in humidity, and it can really make them hard to hatch. So you want to fight the urge. You want to try to let as many of your eggs hatch as you can. The chicks will be perfectly fine for those 24 to 36 hours in the incubator with no food and water. They still have all the nutrients that they got from the egg during that time, from the yolk, and they don't need to eat for that amount of time. So after that, we usually do 24 hours. After 24 hours, we'll put them into the brooder, which is what you saw us do on the last video that we just had. And in the brooder, they will stay there for 3 weeks. By that time, they should be fully feathered and ready to move outside to a place like this. You do want to keep them out of wind and rain, but they do pretty well in the cold weather once they have all of their feathers. Once they're moved outside at 3 weeks old, you've got a few more weeks to go. Somewhere in that 6 to 8 week range is when they're going to be mature, and you can either process them, and also in the 6 to 8 week range is when they're going to start laying eggs. So that's a very fast turnaround. You can go from egg to mature bird laying its own eggs in about 8 weeks. Now, after our last video where we showed us hatching the quail eggs and putting them in the brooder, I got some questions about my brooder setup, mostly about the waterers. A lot of you who have raised quail in the past pointed out that the waterers that I'm using are actually chicken chick waterers, and they're a little bit too big for quail, and that I should really have something in them like marbles or something to keep the baby quail from drowning. You're absolutely right. I always put actually just gravel out of the driveway in there, and that keeps the quail from getting in and be able to drown. I just forgot to put them in before that we shot that video. I guess I was too excited about all those baby quail hatching. So good job pointing that out, you guys, but it is definitely something you should do, put something in there. Now, a lot of you also asked though why I use those and I don't use the ones that are specifically made for quail, which are smaller and you don't have to put anything in. And the truth is I've had very bad luck with those as far as it actually letting water out into the cup part. A lot of times I used those for a while, and several times I've gone over there and the water has been completely out, sometimes for several hours. And those little chicks need water on a regular basis. So I don't know what it is about the ones, maybe it's just the ones I had, but I had very bad luck with them. As soon as I switched back to the bigger ones and just put rocks in, I've had no problems at all. So that's what I'm sticking with.
Another common question we've been getting lately about the quail is about their tiny eggs and how many of these quail eggs equal a chicken egg. And I would say about 3. Right. In my baking, I use 3 quail eggs in replace of a chicken egg. And we've also had some comments about, gosh, what a pain to have to crack all these tiny little eggs when you want to have scrambled eggs. Well, there's actually a really cool trick. It's actually a tool to help you crack quail eggs easier. And it is scissors, quail egg scissors. You take your quail egg pointy side up and you just insert it into the quail scissors. And you just snip the top of the egg right off. I'm not gonna do it right now.
And you just pour the insides out.
Yeah, the top comes off and you go bloop, and the egg comes right out. It's super easy.
Right, so you don't have to crack every little egg individually. This makes it super fast.
Right, and surprisingly, you hardly ever get an eggshell in there.
Right, so that's the trick right there. A quail egg scissors is how you can use your quail eggs effectively without having to crack so many tiny little eggs. A lot of you have been asking also what the chicks that just hatched in the previous video are for. Are we raising those up for meat, or what are we going to be using them for? Actually, those, which are all the jumbo quail, are going to be my new breeding stock. The breeders that I have behind me I'll also be keeping, but the jumbos are going to be my new main breeding stock. So out of those, I'll be collecting eggs. We'll sell some of the eggs. We'll sell some of the eggs for hatching. We'll also be selling live quail once these are up and running as far as laying their own eggs. And so, but mainly I'm going to be using those to raise more quail meat for our family.
Another question we've gotten recently is whether quail continue to lay eggs in the winter. And this is an actually important question for us homesteaders because many of you know that in the winter our chickens pretty much stop laying eggs,
right,
and so do our ducks. So
right,
there's a time frame in there where we're pretty much not getting any, or not very many at least, eggs.
Right. We actually haven't gotten a chicken or duck egg in about 3 weeks now.
Exactly. We don't supply supplemental light or heat for our chickens and our ducks, so they pretty much stop laying over the winter because the days are so short and they don't have very much light. But because we are providing the light that the quail need to continue laying, we are still getting quail eggs every single day. We have 8 females right now that are laying, and most days we're getting 7 or 8 quail eggs every single day.
Right. Well, we have our lights come on for 14 hours a day. I have them come on at 3 o'clock in the morning and then go off about the same time that it gets dark outside, around 5 or 5:30 in the evening. And from what I've read, it's better to make them start the day early and have it still get dark about the natural time. For some reason, I guess that's supposed to be better for egg production than it is to give them like longer in the morning and longer at night. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I read, and it seems to be working fine.
Well, you guys, those are the questions that we have to answer for you today regarding the rabbits and the quail. We are hoping to continue doing videos like this, answering in-depth questions that you guys have about quail, about rabbits, really about anything. But because we're getting back into quail and rabbits, we really have a lot of information to share with you coming up in the future. So make sure that if you have more questions about quail and rabbits, make sure you put them in the comment section below so that we can have an opportunity to answer them for you, either in this kind of a setting or in like a teaching setting.
Right. We really do feel like quail and rabbits are kind of the gateway animal into meat production.
Yes.
If you have never raised animals for meat before, both of these are a good choice to start with. We really recommend you start with both of them,
right,
if you have the ability to do that, because they're both easy to raise, fast turnaround, and provide just a wealth of not only experience for you, but also some good nutritious meat for your family.
You guys, if you're enjoying our videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below. And also, the best way to help us is really just to share our videos on your social media. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.